All right, AP World. Hope you guys are hanging in there. This will be, I think, day 9, April 9th of our homeschool. Hope you know as fun as filming in my garage is. I'm going to come up with some cute little assignments, some fun things to do after this, especially this one I like to do on the beginning of World War I. Sorry if I'm a little distracted today. We got lawnmowers and garbage trucks and the city's testing the fire hydrants. There's all kinds of weird stuff going on today. So I'm going to try and stay focused here as we finish up imperialism. We're going to talk about imperialism in the Ottoman Empire, which is complicated. Because the Ottomans are this large, diverse empire, one of the great gunpowder empires. And its headquarters, if you remember, is in old Anatolia, what we now call Turkey. But it's multi-ethnic and multi-diverse, going down into the Middle East, over into North Africa, up into, southeastern Europe. So the Ottomans are everywhere. And while they're going to get imperialized, they're going to hang on until World War I. So this is kind of an interesting, complicated venture here. And so what we have going back to the late 1700s, 1798, is everyone's favorite tiny little Corsican, Napoleon, invades Egypt. He wanted to emulate his two great heroes, one being Alexander the Great, and the second one being Julius Caesar. And his invasion of Egypt kind of reconnects or renews contact between Europe and the great Islamic empires of Asia, especially the three big gunpowder empires, the Ottomans, the Safavids, and the Mughals. Now we remember in the age of absolutism, these things were as powerful, if not stronger, than anything in Europe. The Ottomans, like the Mughals and the Safavids before them, are beginning to lose their grip of power. And it was all due to industrial technology. The Ottomans were not industrialized as the West, giving the West the advantage. And this will open up the possibility or the door for European nations to enter and carve out some Ottoman territory. Remember, this is the heyday of imperialism. So if it's available, we are going to get it. And this will give Europe access to Islamic territories. The Muslims have an enormous part of the world, taken over here, right? So it extends from Morocco and North Africa, across the Middle East, into India, down into Southeast Asia. So you have this big swath of territory covering 3 continents. And it had been controlled for the last 300 years, as we said, by the great gunpowder empires. But at this point, all of them are in different stages of decline. The other thing is these once dominant absolute monarchs, like we talked about, were not strong enough to control their societies. And when you combine the internal disorder like the Ottomans with all their multi-ethnic and multi-religious people, and governing this large, diverse empire, all of a sudden comes Western Europe and the factors of imperialism. All right, boom, 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 boom. All right, Darth Vader's coming out for the Imperial March. And the Western powers will use whatever tool in the toolbox they could find to get in there, whether it was military pressure, economic pressure, diplomatic negotiation. It didn't matter, but they were going to find a way to get in there and make sure that they win. All right. The other problem is a lot of these empires are made up of smaller regions, and they don't understand their role in an empire as a whole. All right. They look after their own self-interest, so they're not UVA basketball, right? I'm not going to do my job for the good of the team. It's a bunch of guys looking out for themselves. And so this is going to begin the slow collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Now, at the height, all right, we understand that the Ottoman Sultan is trying to maintain his grip of power. All right, he's trying to hang on to his territory, and he doesn't like this nationalist movement that has been happening, especially with his neighbor up in Austria. Austria-Hungary was beginning to lose territory. We remember Count Camillo Cavour gets Italy formed into a nation. So the Ottomans are very similar to the Habsburgs in the fact that they both have these multi-ethnic, multi-religious empires with a bunch of small, tiny populations in them. And these populations wanted independence. Romanians, Greeks, Serbians, right? All of these guys wanted their own countries. And so what begins to happen, if you remember the parable of the little Dutch boy trying to plug the holes in the dam, is people begin to rebel. Like there's a rebellion in Saudi Arabia, and the Ottoman army goes down there and hammers it. And then there's one in Lebanon, and they go and hammer that one. Then there's one over in Egypt, and they hammer that, and there's one up in southeastern Europe. And no matter where they went, if they went here and put out one rebellion, there was another one down here. So the Ottomans are ping-ponging back all over the place. And so as the Ottoman army, puts one down, a new protest opens somewhere else. And as the Ottomans are ping-ponging back and forth trying to solve every single problem, they lose one of their most precious territories, and that is going to be the country of Egypt. We're going to get there in 1 second. The other factor is the Crimean War. All right? And here comes the Crimean War, as we talked about, 1853 to 1856, when the Ottomans have to defend themselves against Mother Russia, who's coming down to once again try and get, say it with me, a warm water port. That is what we must have to get into, like warm waters. But they simply can't. And so the Ottoman army has to look for help. And as a result of this, the empire is weakened, because they've got to have England and France join in to help them. All right, so they get help from England and France, and when they do so, the British and the French are circling like vultures. They're hoping, we're going to defend the Ottomans. They're hoping for the imminent collapse so they can have first dibs on Ottoman territory, or they're going to say, hey, in exchange for helping us, we need a little bit of your land. It's all about imperialization. So as a result of asking for the Europeans to help, all right, the Sultan realizes how far behind the Ottoman Empire has fallen. And he realizes that he is going to need to modernize. So he wants to try and find a way to modernize, and yet, just like we saw in China and Japan and in India, kind of add in Western models of taxation and government, and most importantly, industrialization. So just like everybody else, they send young men abroad. These young men are going to go to the West, and they're going to study industry and government. When they come, they're going to bring all that back. Problem for the Ottoman Sultan is when they get back, they talk about democracy. Whoa, 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 whoa. You mean giving people a voice? Yeah, where they vote on stuff. And then we do what the majority, votes for. Whoa, I don't really know about that. They talk about democracy. They talk about equality. And they're like, well, the Sultan's like, that's fine, but that doesn't fit with my monarchical model. I am a Sultan for a reason. I tell you to do it, and you then do it. And so these young men in the 1890s form a group of guys known as Young Turks. And Young Turks in the modern day is like a group of young, zealous young guys, like say a new young history teacher comes in and I know everything and I'm going to solve all the classroom issues and everyone's going to be great and my lessons are the best. You should do these too, like Melega and Roburn. We're like, easy there, young man. You're full of fire and vinegar and passion, that's great, but we know a few tricks of the trade is easy there. So these young guys just want to change and revolutionize, and they're all gung-ho. They haven't been around to figure things out yet. But in Turkey, and it's not a bad thing all the time, but these Turkish guys, all right, are going to form a movement known as the Young Turks, right around 1890. And these Young Turks were bent on trying to get rid of the Sultan. Think of land and freedom in Russia, right? We're trying to get rid of the Tsar. It's the same thing in the Ottoman Empire. And so they instigate a lot of rebellions. They instigate a lot of protests. And while the Ottomans, facing internally, they're not looking over their shoulder, and little by little by little, the Europeans are creeping in. And the biggest thing is going to be the loss of the Suez Canal, which is kind of brilliantly sneaky, kind of Sherlock Holmes antithesis on Professor Moriarty-ish here. And the best example of the way England is going to help chip away at the Ottoman Empire is the story of the Suez Canal. So it's a thing of victory for Great Britain and a big L, as my son would say, for the Ottoman Empire. So the Suez Canal, you may know, links the Mediterranean Sea with the Persian Gulf. It's a little over 100 miles. And with the Suez Canal, it's a shortcut over to Asia in the Indian Ocean. If not, you would have to sail all the way down Africa, go around the Cape of Good Hope, and then all the way up through the Indian Ocean. So the Suez Canal cuts that time just astronomically. So that's what we want to do, getting access to the Indian Ocean and even the Pacific Ocean. But after Napoleon's invasion in 1798, a lot of people in Egypt say, my God, look at what he did down here. A lot of people see the need for economic reform. If you remember in your reading guide, we talked about the Egyptian leader Muhammad Ali, not the greatest boxer ever, but the Egyptian leader. And Muhammad Ali is one of the first to fully realize the necessity of an industrial economy and what it will mean in the Middle East as Egypt becomes the first fully industrial country. Now, Egypt is in North Africa, but it's often been associated due to Islam with the Middle East. So Muhammad Ali is going to go hard. He is going to rewrite the taxation laws. Irrigation canals from the Nile River cleaned and updated and modernized. And cotton is planted, all right? It's much easier for England to come down, or the European countries and get cotton from Egypt than to go all the way across the Atlantic to like North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia and Alabama and Louisiana. They can get it right here. We can get into this game. And this cotton industry gives Egypt greater access to the growing world trade. And so this is on, Muhammad Ali is there right, he gets this started, and Egypt is beginning to thrive again. They're the first fully industrial, country in the Middle East. And then unfortunately, like we've seen time and time and time again, 1849, Muhammad Ali dies. And as he dies, this is right smack dab in the heart of imperialism. And so due to Napoleon, the French already had an enormous influence in Egypt. And I will think I know what to do. I will consult with my engineering friend Dimitri, and we will figure this out. And I think we can dig through the desert and make a canal here. And the French engineers come up with the idea to speed up trading by building the 100-mile Suez Canal. Oh, there we go. So, now, as they do this, the canal is going to be a very expensive venture. It's going to cost a lot of money. And so the Egyptian government says, hey, this is a way for us to make more money. They jump on it. They back the plan. They realize they can make a lot of money, so they say go for it. Well, the problem is, by the 1870s, Egypt has run out of money. It's a lot more difficult and a lot more costly than they thought. So Egypt is out of money. And the Egyptian prime minister says, I know, we will sell shares of the canal like they're part of a corporation, right? We'll have investors give us money, and then we will pay them in return for the canal, all right? We're just going to sell it like, shares of stock. Oh, that is a great idea. Now, in order to get this money, this is what they do. And the British government's like, bully, oh, what the fish and chips is going on, God save the Queen and all that. Earl Grey hot. If they're selling stock, the British East India Company is a mastermind when it comes to stock manipulation. So the British Prime Minister, a guy's named Disraeli, like, you know, Israeli, but put a D in front of it, very quietly says, I got this. And what he does is very quietly, under several different corporations that may or may not be real, he will take money from Parliament and little by little buy 100 shares here and 50 here and 70 here. And he's not doing it under one name, but under multiple. The English government, before the Egyptians figure it out, owned the majority of the shares in the Suez Canal. Egypt should have kept 51% for them and only sold 49%, but it was a new idea. They were just shucking it out. So different sources and different companies, and all of a sudden, the Egyptian people realized what had happened. The Suez Canal is owned by Great Britain. England controls the only water access between the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean. The Mediterranean, where they were already strong. So, the English quickly spread their power and influence over the country of Egypt, making it a protectorate. And so, with the technically, the government of Egypt still answered to the Ottoman Sultan, it was England who was running the show. The Ottoman Empire loses Egypt, the British gain territory, and even more important, a major trade route. So, I'm going to talk about new imperialism. Different day. I think we already talked about China, so maybe we don't need to do that. I will go over it again if you guys need to, but I think we already did Japanese or Chinese imperialism. If not, I'll do it again. This is going to be, I know, this should be day 4, because the first PowerPoint was so big. We're going to divide that one into 2 days. So that should be it for this week. Keep an eye out for things about World War I on Google Classroom. All right, talk to you guys soon.